All right. Welcome to another episode of Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast. Oh yeah, the theme song just happened, so I remember with the theme. Oh my god, that was an amazing theme song.
Yay, theme song!
Yeah, I'm just joking. I'm just trying to pat myself on the back. But yes, welcome back to Hollywood's Haunted podcast, where we discuss everything Hollywood, everything death, and everything that we think you should care about, I guess, when it comes to death. But like we told you in the previous episode, if you have been listening, today we actually have co-owner of Hollywood's Haunted with us, Tia Bean.
Yay!
Tia Bean!
Hey, thanks guys.
I'll probably edit in some audience noise.
Wonderful, yeah. Thanks for having me. It took me a long time to get here. I had to travel really far
That was,
to get here.
From the land of living room.
Here.
We took the No Girls Allowed sign off the doors.
Oh, that's
okay.
right. Yeah. She saw the sign. Was gone.
For those of you who don't know, this is my bedroom. So I am literally sitting on my bed right now. But thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. As you know, I really like this stuff, so yay!
Yay!
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Tia was basically the brainchild behind Hollywood's Haunted itself.
Brainchild.
I should have said something more, I don't know, brain adult.
That works.
But no, she's definitely more of the creator of Hollywood's Haunted. So when we want haunted stories or creepy shit, we usually just go right to Tia anyway. So
Yay!
now we're at the source.
Yay!
So, you said you wanted to.
Oh yeah, I brought a story today for you guys, and I know I've been talking to you guys for a couple weeks about it, even though I did most of my research 3 hours ago.
There's been lots of teasing.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this isn't a ghost story, and nobody dies, but it is a very shocking and disgusting story. I'm going to tell you the story of Patricia Douglas and the MGM studio party. Dun dun dun.
The MGM studio party.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
So this is the late 1930s, and Patricia Douglas was a background actor, extra, kind of like I do the same thing, the people the people who you see in the background of the big crowds. In the late 1930s, this could even be some of the dancers that you see in some of those big musical numbers. So Patricia was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but she came to Hollywood with her mother, Mildred, and her mother was a seamstress and a designer for a lot of the big studios. And in her childhood, she was very coddled by her mother. But as Patricia got into her tweens, her early teen years, it became more and more obvious that her mother had kind of lost interest in her. Like, her mother really wanted a baby, but wasn't really interested in raising a young woman. So she was very much neglected and kind of left to her own for a long time, which ended up with her dropping out of school at 14 and then just kind of hanging around Hollywood. And she made friends with a lot of the movie stars like Dick Powell, Bing Crosby, I have it listed here, William Frawley, which I read that and I was like, how old was William Frawley at this time in the 1930s? She's only 14 and hanging out with William Frawley.
He was playing marbles while she was
skipping
hoop.
Right?
So you're like Jax, do you, kid?
So she's also very smart, and she's a quick learner, and since she's just kind of hanging out with Hollywood, or in Hollywood, of course she starts to do movies, anybody who lives in this town for a length of time ends up doing something involved with movies at some point in their life.
Especially that early on.
Yeah, especially when this is the only thing that Hollywood does at the time. So she starts doing movies. She's in movies So This Is Africa and Gold Diggers were two titles that I found of her that she'd been in. And so she starts going out for dance calls as well, because she can start to learn this stuff. She wasn't quite a dancer, but later on in her life, they asked her, who did you dance like? And she said, I danced just like J-Lo, which is so funny. In the documentary I watched, which I watched today, a great documentary that really covers this. It's called Girl 27, and she talks about it like later on in her life. She was quiet for 65 years about this, and the guy to unveil this covered up secret that I'm about to get into was a guy named David Sten. At the time, he was researching Jean Harlow. He wrote a book about Jean Harlow called Bombshell. Fun fact about that, the editor for Bombshell is Jackie Onassis. Yeah, I know, right? So he's doing this article, or this book, Bombshell, and he's coming across these newspapers about Jean Harlow's death, but also on these newspapers are this article about this MGM party with Patricia Douglas. So this is what kind of inspires him to start to do some research and find Patricia Douglas and get her story. So as I was saying, she was kind of a chorus girl, a dancer for some of the big musical numbers, mostly those of MGM. So it wasn't completely like out of the blue or uncalled for her to go to a casting call, and which she did on May 2nd, 1937. So she goes to this casting call.
And she's how old at this point?
She's 15.
15, okay.
She goes to this casting call. She's 15. And she was told to report on May 5th to Western Costumes, where she would be given an outfit, and then they would have the production at Hal Roach's ranch, which which they filmed there a lot. Hal Roach, he was a producer director behind the Laurel and Hardy films and Little Rascals, and they filmed a lot of Little Rascals at his ranch. So it doesn't sound fishy at this point.
It's a legit place.
Legit place. But she says they never mentioned it was for an MGM party. So, the party itself. MGM wanted to gain more traction, and so they decided that they were going to throw this 5-day sales convention. They were going to invite salesmen from all across the world, businessmen from various other cities that they had studios at, and bring them all here to Culver City, where their studio is. And so, day one, about 200 salesmen arrive at the Pasadena train station that was owned by MGM. The train station is decorated with red, white, and blue banners, and Louis B. Mayer is there to greet them. And Louis B. Mayer says...
And that's Louis B. Mayer.
Louis B. Mayer
MGM.
of
MGM.
Metro, Goldwyn, and Mayer.
Okay.
So Louis B. Mayer says, so it's Louis B. Mayer. He gets on this makeshift stage, and there are all these girls there putting little ribbons and little flowers onto the men's lapels. And the men were like kind of manhandling this woman. It's kind of the first red flag. They had spent 3 days on the train to get there, and one of the men says the Santa Fe isn't doing their job. We ran out of scotch yesterday. So they're already sloshed when they get there. And Louis B. Mayer says, we have all these women here to greet you. This should basically tell you, what we want from you and how we feel about you. And we feel about you, the kind of good time ahead of you, anything you want. Mm-hmm. So he basically is saying, we're going to have this great time, no rules, no laws, anything you want, we're going to get it for you. So later that night, they go to dinner at the Ambassador Hotel. This is Sunday. The next day, on Monday, they are motorcycle escorted to Culver City. And there, a gentleman by the name of Eddie Mannix, who was known, he was a studio executive for MGM, but he was known as Patricia Douglas put it, as a fucking gangster. And they're what they called a fixer. So he would shut people up and fix things. So Eddie Mannix presents Louis B. Mayer with the key to the city. There's a marching band that plays The Gang's All Here. And throughout Monday and Tuesday, they're wined and dined. They meet movie stars like Clark Gable, Jean Harlow at this time. Even though she was pretty ill at this time, it says that she was there at this party. And Joan Crawford. So on the third day, somewhere on Monday or Tuesday, the salesmen get a invitation. And the invitation says, "Yippee, get ready for the Wild West at Roach's. A stag affair out in the wild and woolly West where men are men." So,
okay.
Yeah, so they're going to go and have this like Western hoedown at Hal Roach's place. Now, this is supposed to happen on Wednesday, May 5th, which is the same day as Patricia Douglas's casting call. So the women arrive at the casting call, 120 young female dancers, plus several who had answered a small classified ad for MGM party hostess. So 120 of them don't know that this is for a party, but a few of them do. They're brought to Western costumes. They're fitted with cowboy hats, a bolero jacket, leather-studded cuffs, short suede skirts, black boots. They seemed less Annie Oakley and more Gypsy Rose Lee. So they think they're going to be...
like cocktail serving, stuff like that?
Well, some of them know that, but most of the girls think they're going to be doing one of those big dance numbers in some Western musical.
Some musical, yeah, that's what it sounds like.
They're paid $7.50 and given a hot meal for the day. That's what they're told they're going to get. So they go to Western costumes, and then they are bused to Rancho Rochero, which is what the ranch is called. And that already
explains it all.
Already sounds disgusting. Rancho Rochero, 7 miles from the studio. And they're herded into a large banquet hall and told to sit at the tables and wait. There was a bar and an orchestra, but no lights, camera, or crew. Yeah. So the girls are sitting there waiting, and they kind of feel like something's up. You know, like, why are we just sitting at this table? But most of them still think that it's for some sort of casting call.
I mean, plus, like, if you think about it, I mean, when you go on sets and stuff, it's mostly hurry up and wait, you know, like, so they could think like, oh, yeah, whatever, as long as I get my $7.50 and a hot meal, you know, like, I'll sit here and do nothing.
Nothing's out of the ordinary.
I mean, for all they knew, it could have just been holding, and they were going to film somewhere else.
Sure,
right, yeah.
You know, Patricia Douglas says, "You would never think they would pull something like that. You're trusting the studio. You're not expecting anything but to work in a movie. That's what you're there for." So at 7 p.m., Eddie Mannix, Hal Roach, Louis B. Mayer, MGM bigwigs, male stars, and 300 salesmen show up to the site of these young women in these cute little cowboy outfits, and they go crazy. They mistake these professional dancers for party favors. And with no telephone out there, no form of transportation, the women have no means of escaping or leaving, so they have to stay.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think the men thought it was a mistake. They were led to believe that it was okay.
That's what they were there for, you know? And why would they think otherwise?
Sure.
Yeah, not to give them, like...
Where men are men.
You know what I mean? Like, not to give them an out or anything, but yeah, also, like, yeah, that's really weird. You're setting up this whole... Jesus Christ.
So basically... the men are served, it says 500 cases of champagne and scotch for 300 men. Early on in the evening, Laurel and Hardy perform, and the Dandridge sisters, Dorothy Dandridge being the star at 13 years old.
Dorothy Dandridge?
Yeah.
Like, from Hollywood High School, Dorothy Dandridge?
Yeah, she's a famous performer.
Crazy.
So they perform early in the night. But by 10 p.m., it says the veneer has vanished. And these men are fucking sloshed. Ginger Wyatt, 18-year-old Ginger Wyatt, who was brought there, she starts to freak out because these men are basically mauling these women. And she asks actor Wallace Beery for help. Wallace Beery starts swinging and punching guys. And he ends up getting Ginger Wyatt out of there. She's one of the only ones to escape. And he's the only good guy in this story.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of a badass. Like, he was the only one to, like, turn and be like, whoa, like, this is not okay. I'm getting this girl out of here. She needs some help, you know? And, I mean, otherwise they're stuck there. They've been bussed there. The men's cars are all parked outside, but the women, they don't have any transportation.
Yeah.
So this guy, David Ross, he's there at the party as well. And he is a businessman from MGM in Chicago, Illinois. And he keeps asking Patricia Douglas to teach him how to dance. Dance called trekking. It, you know, very, we're going to trekken it or whatever. It's a common dance at the time. She says he was all hands, any excuse to brush up against me. She called him slimy and described him as having bulging big eyes. Here's a picture of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a swarmy little bastard.
For the people listening right now, she is basically holding up a frog of a person.
She calls him, yeah, she says he was a slimy bullfrog, is what she actually called him.
Like, you could see the, like that.
So,
that's where he makes his noise.
So he keeps asking her to dance, and she's like, no, leave me alone. Like, she's pissed, because she did not expect this at all. And at some point, David Ross and several other men try to get her to drink. She does not drink. Even though she was hanging out with, you know, some movie stars and stuff, she does not drink. She does not do drugs. She has no real aspirations of fame either, so she's not trying to rub elbows with anybody. You know, she's not trying to play nice to, like, you know, make it up.
Sure.
And that'll come out later. You know, there's a lot of people who kind of do sick, underhanded things or let people get away with stuff just to, you know, ensure their careers. But she wasn't about that. She wasn't looking for fame at all. So David Ross is trying to get her to drink, and they have pitchers of champagne and scotch there. And she asks what that drink is that smells so awful, and they're like, it's scotch. And she's like, who would drink this? It smells awful. And she refuses to drink it, so David Ross and a bunch of men hold her down, plug her nose, and start pouring alcohol down her throat. She gets so sick that she has to run out of the barn and throw up. At this point, David Ross comes behind her, and he says, oh God, I gotta find it. He says, make a sound, and you'll never breathe again. So then he drags her to the parked car and pins her in the back seat, where he says, I'm going to destroy you. Then she starts to black out, and he slaps her to wake her up. He says, cooperate, I want you awake. So David Ross rapes her in the back of this car. Around 11:30, a gentleman named Clement Sloth, who was a parking attendant at this party, hears screaming. He hears Patricia Douglas saying, I'm being attacked, I'm being attacked. And then she's heard saying, isn't anything sacred around here? Now, at the time, she's 15. She's a virgin, and she's just been violated for the first time ever, and she's completely in shock. Clement Sloth sees Patricia coming from a car, stumbling, and then sees David Ross running away. But later on, when he testifies in front of the court, he claims that he didn't recognize David Ross. And after the fact of all of this, Clement Soth, S-O-T-H, his daughters claim that he lied under oath and that he did this to ensure a lifetime career with MGM. He was thinking about his family and his career at that point. And his daughters in the documentary were like, you know, hindsight is 2020. I don't know what I would have done at the time, you know, thinking about my family. I don't know what choice I would have made. Basically, Patricia says, the next thing I remember is being in a small hospital and given a douche. I remember because the water was cold and it was not pleasant. Now, she's taken to a nearby hospital where, in a studio car. Now, this hospital is owned partially by MGM, and the, let me see if I have the doctor's name, Edward Linguist, treated Douglas, co-owned the hospital, and his practice largely dependent on MGM. For us, he was the family doctor, says a studio worker. So basically, they don't do any sort of rape kit on her. She's given a douche, which takes away any evidence that would have been there. She doesn't know any better. She'd never had this happen to her anymore. And then she's driven home in a studio car. And her mom basically acts like nothing happened. She's given no word of warmth whatsoever from her mom. Nothing. So Patricia, doesn't let this go at all. So 2 days later, she has to go to MGM to pick up her check for $750. And as she's picking up her check, she tells the cashier, "You ought to know what happened to me so it doesn't happen to anybody else." But basically, she's told, you know, what do you expect us to do about it? You know, here's your $750, you know, kick dirt.
Have a nice day.
Yeah. And she says, I wasn't trying to get anything. I just wanted somebody to believe me. So she's one of, if not the first person to ever speak out against this happening to anybody. So she goes to the police, she talks about this, and there is somewhat of an investigation that is held where police basically start to interview some of her friends and family members. They start to question her morality. You know, was Patricia a drinker? You know, things like this, trying to bring up any type of dirt on Patricia, you know, and defame her. And funny thing is, even though LAPD, Culver City PD, as well as MGM's own police service was all present at the party, there was no police report ever made. Yeah.
So there was police at the party, but all this, you know, debauchery was going on, and
damn it!
Yay! Oh, sorry, our cat is touching the microphone.
So all this debauchery was going on, and there was police officers actually at the party itself.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, but basically MGM owned the whole of the city.
I'm sure they didn't invite the important people so that they don't, you know, wouldn't grease the wheels.
It says here, the power of MGM is unimaginable today. They owned everyone. The DA, the LAPD, they ran this place.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. And the fact that also if she made a complaint, it really wouldn't have gone anywhere and nothing would have happened. Mm-hmm. Because even a key witness didn't speak up for fear of his own job. So it's like...
Yeah, exactly.
If he saw something specifically and wouldn't speak up, then why would anybody else? Nobody else is going to mess with that gravy train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when it comes to trial, there's actually, out of the 120 girls, there's only 2 that show up to speak. One being Ginger Wyatt, who got out of there. But I'll get to that in a second. So the headlines start talking about this. This is a very scandalous affair. They publish Patricia's name, address, and a picture of her. They can't use the word raped, so they use attacked, outraged, ravished, and they call it a studio orgy.
The newspapers are not allowed to use the word rape?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's considered a 4-letter word.
Interesting.
And watching the documentary, there was a girl, a woman, because she was much older at this time, but she was another person who had been an extra for MGM as well. And where was I going? Now I went off on a tangent. Totally forgot what I was about to say. That she didn't even know what the word rape was until she read it in the newspaper. And she had to learn the word rape and the word tart, which were both in the same article about Patricia. So she didn't even know anything about
So
this.
she did read the word rape in print? Or in like a book or something like that?
Maybe about something like that. Now I'm all confused.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off.
Yeah, no. She claimed that she learned the word rape from the case. But, yeah. But it wasn't printed. Sorry, no, it wasn't printed. It was just kind of talked about.
Got it.
Yeah. So, and then, so they publish her name, her picture, and her address, but when they're referring to MGM, they call it a local studio. Yay! So one good thing to come out of this, being in the newspapers, though, is another girl comes forward about being raped by an MGM executive. Her name was Eloise Spann. She was raped by an MGM executive. She was a virgin at the time. She got pregnant and she had to have an abortion. But unfortunately, nothing ever came of her case. Her son, who's interviewed for the documentary, didn't know anything about it. He didn't really even know that she had been a singer when she was 19 years old. And she eventually ends up killing herself much later in her life.
Wow.
And he talks about how she was always in pain her whole life, or his whole life, growing up. She always seemed like she was in pain. And he didn't know that she was a singer, and David Sten, who was doing this documentary, wanted to show a little bit of Eloise Spann's musical career in the documentary, but MGM would not release any footage of Eloise Spann. So they're still very tight about this whole situation,
They
still want to open that can of worms.
God,
Yeah.
Ugh.
So basically, from what I've never gone to court or anything before, so what I'm assuming happened was that there was like a pre-trial before it would actually go to trial to decide whether or not a crime has been committed. So the DA at the time was best friends with Louis B. Mayer. Her appointed lawyer later would try to become the DA, but I'll get into that. So she's appointed a lawyer. She's brought to a packed courtroom. 2 women come forth on her behalf. Now they claim that Patricia is they start to say, who would love this woman? Look at her. Who would want her? And they start to paint her as if she was this reckless woman. Someone even came out and said that they saw Patricia Douglas passed out at the Knickerbocker Hotel bar, which she never drank. So this is obviously made up. And basically the case is dismissed. As Patricia Douglas is leaving the courtroom, the press push her and David Ross together to get a photograph. Yeah. She's so overwhelmed by it that she starts running down the hall and tries to jump out of the window of the courtroom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus.
She says, I was going to jump through the glass. Or, I can't. I was going to jump through the glass to get away from everything and everybody so I wouldn't be hurt anymore. So, the case is dismissed. It sits dormant for 3 years. It's brought back up, but at this time, her lawyer, who was named William J.F. Brown, he wants to become a DA now, so he has to go up against the DA, who is Louis B. Mayer's best friend. So the way he's able to leverage it is by not showing up in court. He doesn't show up in court 3 times, because he's trying to win over MGM. And he's like, if I botch this case, then MGM will like me. And he does. And even her own mother, who was supposed to be her guardian at the time, basically drops the ball on showing up as well. So it's dismissed a second time. So it's first dismissed at a state level, and then it's dismissed at a federal level. And basically, nothing happens for 65 years until David Sten discovers this story as he's doing his research and does this documentary called Girl 27. It's called that because that was what she was told on the casting call, is that you're Girl 27 out of 120 dancers. So in those 66 years, she says she's never been in love. She never danced again. That was all taken away from her. But when he does this documentary on her, she says, I was getting ready to die. I'd buy less food. I wasn't planning to be around long. Now I don't want to go. Now I have something to live for. And for the first time, I'm proud of myself. And I love how this Vanity Fair article ends with this story. It says, the lion raped, but Patricia Douglas still is the mouse that roared.
Oh.
And that is my story of
That's
Patricia
crazy.
Douglas.
Jesus
And
Christ.
the most disgusting party ever held. I don't even know if it is, actually. I don't even know if this
I'm
is
sure
like
that's
the only...
The tip of the fuckbird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Oh, God. That's...
So...
Man.
I think I covered most of it. I apologize to Patricia Douglas's family and David Sten if I left anything out. I highly encourage anybody listening to this to read the Vanity Fair article called It Happened One Night at MGM, or to watch Girl 27. You know, there's a lot more in there about other things that were happening at the same time and the after effects of this whole situation. And sorry I bounced around. I'll get better the next time. I promise,
it was
guys.
pretty streamlined. It was
Thanks.
Yeah.
I hope my lisp didn't come out too much either. So
No, you're fine. No.
One point.
Ugh, God, that's...
so yeah. So then on that happy, wonderful note. Sorry, I clapped.
Golf clap. But no,
So,
that's fantastic.
yeah, and I hope that just, like, I know it's not a ghost story, but I was just trying to set the scene for, like, you know, some of the dark things that really happened in the early days of Hollywood and just how they, like, really treated women. And to this day, we're still dealing with Weinsteins and the Me Too movement and, you know, the parties like this, like, obviously still fucking happen, you know?
Definitely.
So...
That was like Westworld without them being robots. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
just... Ugh.
I mean, the fact that they were told that it was a casting, or it was it was going to be some sort of casting call. You know, they had no idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, there's so much.
To be
so much
tricked
wrong.
into that, and then all of a sudden you're like basically roped in there,
Yeah.
trapped.
And also to think, like, me as an extra, how many times I've shown up, been given my costume, and then bust out to a place where I've never
fucking
been.
Nowhere. Or like,
been before.
you're gonna sit in a parking lot at 4 a.m. till 8, then we're gonna start, you know, and I have to be like, all right, I'll see you later.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
know?
Great.
And you're right. You put all of your trust in that because, like you said, you don't know
Yeah.
what's happening. And of course, you want to do a good job. You want to be remembered. You're hoping to get your foot in the door as far as the business is concerned. So you don't want to cause waves. You don't want to ask all these questions and be annoying and whatnot. And when you're out there and trapped and don't know, you're just kind of in a room, and all of a sudden you just let all these bulls into the room. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Oh,
just
man.
get knocked off. So I can totally see that. That's really tough stuff. And you know, in a way, your story does kind of relate because, you know, a lot of people feel that when you see a ghost, it's because of a lot of, let's say, negative energy or that kind of thing. And that kind of energy comes from situations like that. So, you know, it does kind of, you know, intersect in a way because of the energy, because of that raw just anger and fear, you know, it goes somewhere. And you know, a lot of people feel that, you know, if she had died, would there have been a ghost of her there? You know, had she died from that, you know.
Or just died, and because a lot of like you're saying, like energies and like or memories, like some she had unfinished business that she, like she said, she never loved, she never danced again, you know, like maybe she wants to stay.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I mean, I definitely think that your story definitely works with the topics that we talk about because of that. You know, it's a lot of, you know, not just from her, obviously, all the other girls that were there. I'm sure there, you know.
And, I mean, one reason I wanted to tell this story is because it is not talked about very much either, you know, and I think...
I mean, apparently not.
I think it should be, you know. I mean, it was... When David Sten was going over this, he was, like, shocked that he'd never heard this story. And he's writing a book on Jean Harlow at the time. He'd never heard of her, you know? And it's because it was... like covered up so much, like so
nobody talks about it.
Baffling, you know.
Yeah, they wanted it. They made sure it was. Nobody would be there. Yeah, they made sure, which is really fucked up.
Oh yeah. And that's one part I didn't even get into is that a lot of people were, I want to say, hired to testify the wrong thing, you know, to basically say the wrong thing as a witness, to guarantee that they would have a job with MGM. So, God.
It's like misinformation.
Give me a second. I'm going to find the quote where it talks about that. Oh my goodness. Oh man. I can't find it, but it's like basically one of the lawyers with MGM was talking about this guy who wanted to testify, and then he's like, well, you know, what do I need to give him to buy them off, you know? It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
you know?
just how cocky it is and
how blatant.
Yeah, the power is so blatant. And what do you have for us today? Do you have another ray of sunshine for us today?
Of course, yeah. You ready to go next?
Yeah, lighten the mood a little, maybe.
Yeah.
How about a joke?
This one's the opposite of a ghost. This is about a baby being born.
Aww.
Yeah.
Aww.
And then murder.
Oh wait, are you serious?
No, that'd be hilarious. Yeah, the only way to top that is if like, and now about a woman who murdered 127 babies.
There are positive stories about Hollywood.
I thought you were going to say about murdering babies. I was about to be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Dave, you're right.
Remember that one time that it was positive that they murdered that baby?
I mean,
you remember?
If you went back in time and murdered Hitler, you know, as a baby.
We're not going to hear any of those positive stories on this podcast.
No,
but they exist.
Yeah, mine is a ghost story. I noticed, Jameson, you seemed a little like, what the fuck's this story last time, you know? So
okay.
I made sure I got a ghost story.
We got a little pyro in there?
It's not like the best, you know, but I thought it'd be good because it's about movie studio. What's your story? You're doing
I'm doing the
Pacific Warner. So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to do something that was like involved in the studios. So yeah, it's about Edward W. Gray, and this also heavily involves I'm slapping things. You know, I have to talk to you about your papers later.
Slap me in the face. I want you awake during this.
You too, Jameson. Damn it. Damn, that was a good one. So yeah, this also heavily involves a place that used to be called General Service Studios, but now it is called Sunset Las Palmas Studios. I don't know if you've ever been. Did you ever do background work or extra work or anything back in the day?
I've been on sets and things, but not really.
But not at Sunset Studios. No. 1040 Las Palmas Avenue. Like I said, it's now called Sunset Las Palmas Studios.
That's where they filmed Judge Judy.
Me and Tia talked about this before, but we've been there for sure, and we saw Judge Judy, and there's a few other judge shows that
film in that same spot.
So it was actually founded in 1919 by John Jasper, but yeah, like we're saying, tons of stuff films there now. Originally, Howard Hughes famed aviator, producer, billionaire, inventor,
In
etc. Man, hypochondriac and maniac. Yeah, exactly.
Jar peer.
Jar pisser. The man who kept his toenails. He filmed Hell's Angels there. The television show Ozzie and Harriet was filmed there. Green Acres filmed there. Beverly Hillbillies. And for the first 2 years of I Love Lucy, it was actually filmed there before. I think that's...
Before the
They moved
Desi-Lou.
to the Desi-Lou Studios, yeah. That was Desi Arnaz and Lucy Ball, right? Shirley Temple also made her film debut here. And this was also the foundation of the ill-fated Zoetrope Studios. I don't know if you guys ever heard that. It was founded by Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh.
Neither did I, so I did a little research on it. There was the first thing they put there at all to film was actually Apocalypse Now.
Oh.
But that was pretty much the one and only film that Zoetrope did that was any good, I guess. But he basically, Zoetrope Studios was supposed to be Ford Coppola's like advance into the film industry. He wanted to streamline the whole process. He wanted it to be digital. He wanted it to be beamed off of satellites directly. He wanted to do pretty much everything on the studio. So this would basically, I think he actually words it really well. Most of all, the studio would be freed from authority and the meddling of the majors and lawyers and agents. So basically, this studio was so brilliant that it doesn't exist nowadays because it wasn't about making money. It was basically about letting the director have full control.
Okay.
From distribution to marketing to... So you would never have to get a director's cut of a movie, you know? It would just be, this is the director, you know? And this was so ahead of its time that they're still trying to do what he did, like literally having it off of like digital through satellite image, you know? That's stuff that we're still working on, you know, like basically cutting out the middleman of distribution.
And this is early 70s?
This was, 1975 that he had started thinking about that.
Oh, okay.
But that's kind of, he wanted to make that studio happen that way, but when he had this whole idea, this is stuff that's not going to make money in the near future at all, you know? And back then, there was, you know, Hollywood was definitely down on its, you know, luck, and he wasn't making that much money. Apocalypse Now was, I mean, it was a big film, I guess, but more in a artistic sense rather than a blockbuster numbers way, you know. Nice. We caught one. Nice. We caught one. Nice. I hope I wasn't talking.
Sorry.
That was our fourth host, Jameson's stomach. He's hungry, apparently.
He's very interested in the story, okay?
Stomach, air quotes.
So this is kind of the best way it's put. The larger significance of Coppola's purchase of Hollywood General and his attempt to create an alternative studio in the very heart of Hollywood was that it carried with it the promise of an American auteur cinema in which the director might someday control the product from development to release. Okay. That's what I wanted to say, yeah.
Sure.
Which... unfortunately can never happen because we're too greedy, or you know what I mean. It's like there's just so many other people that needed to make money in that sense, you know. But yeah, that was kind of the Zoetrope. Eventually it turned into it was Zoetrope something, American Zoetrope, and their first venture was Bram Stoker's Dracula. Ooh. Which was, you know, good, and then they did
is that with Keanu?
Yeah. But anyway, that was Zoetrope Studios. Just had to show you guys that. But yeah, back to Edward Gray. So Edward Gray fell to his death on stage 4. And stage 4, if you were looking at the gate...
Wait, who's Edward Gray?
Edward Gray. He is the person that I'm talking about.
I'm totally paying attention.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Right? He's this bold one right here.
Oh, okay.
So this, I'm building it up. So he fell to his death in stage 4, and that would be where Judge Judy actually did film. It's one of the bigger stages. But basically, if you were facing the gate, it would be right past the gate on your right-hand side. So very, very close to the front.
And we established that he's an actor or a background?
No, he's not. He actually works on the studio.
Okay.
Edward Gray was actually an electrician. And so he was frequently, up on the high rises and stuff.
The catwalk.
And most of this information, by the way, I forgot to mention, I actually got from Laurie Jacobson's Hollywood, what is it called? Hollywood Haunted. Very close. A Ghostly Tour of Filmland, which I believe we actually own the book. I think we own maybe a few of Laurie Jacobson's.
On the bookshelf over there.
On that bookshelf
I'll have
over
to
there.
look.
Unfortunately, I got it from Yield Internet. But so some people recall it differently. Even Laurie Jacobson recalls it happening on a different stage, in where another studio worker fell to his death, but she never actually gave the name, so a lot of people assume that it was Edward Gray because of the similarities in the story. And they were also on that stage making the film Stairway to Hell. Some films require several stages, so it could have been a different stage. Stairway to Hell was just the working title. It actually finally, I think I have a picture. I don't know, I didn't care. The film that finally came out was called Angel on My Shoulder.
Complete opposite of what it was supposed to be.
Which is still, either way, the title is not good for a man falling to his death. Stairway to Hell or Angel on My Shoulder. Like, who was the one that was like, oh shit, somebody died? Yeah, we're not going to call it this anymore. We're going to change the title. But apparently for many years after, there was several technical problems on the stage. But the reason people assumed that he fell was because of the injuries that he sustained. But the reason he was found, he was actually found on midnight, April 3rd, 1946, underneath a 65-foot catwalk that everyone assumed he had fallen from. Like I said, because of those injuries. But there was later on it actually says that the only other injuries it could have been is if he was run over by a car going at like 50 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. But he was on stage, so they're assuming but it's all who knows? Maybe they ran over him and threw him on
his body on the stage all beat up.
Okay, yeah, like he had been hit by a car. But yeah, like I said, he was found on stage. At midnight, April 3rd, 1946, underneath a 65-foot catwalk. And another theory that was supported that he fell and wasn't run over by a car was actually there was a 2x4, like 15 feet down from the catwalk, that apparently had blood dripping off of it. So he had fell, hit that piece of wood, and then fell even further and then landed on the floor. Mm-hmm. He was also found intoxicated with a level of 0.29.
Oh, whoa!
Which the legal limit is actually 0.08. So yeah, he was trashed. But it was actually a party that they were having for the studio.
Oh, so he was just drunk going up there. What year?
Exactly.
What year is this?
This is 1946.
Oh, okay.
But apparently there were enough questions about his death that an inquest was held. Reportedly, he was with a friend of his. They were said to be uninvited guests at a gay party that was hosted by film star Paul Mooney. And they're actually talking gay as in a happy, great,
well, yeah, in the 40s,
out of control
gay,
party. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
gay
just,
meant happy.
Yeah. They were just having a gay old time. Holding some peen. That's just,
roommate meant gay.
That's right. This is my life roommate. Yeah. We sleep in the same bed and share the same shower. But yeah, so like I said, it was hosted by the film star Paul Mooney. He was the star of Angel on My Shoulder, originally. Hell on Wheels. No, Stairway to Hell. Sorry, Hell on Wheels. Oh god, that's terrible. But it was just to celebrate the completion of the film. This is something that studios did all the time.
It's like the cast party.
Exactly. Yeah, the cast party. Yeah. Neither Edward Gray or his friend worked on the film, but they showed up anyway because Edward he worked on the studio. He was like the studio electrician. Mm-hmm. So, right. I'm sure that was just kind of how you did it, especially back. I'm sure that happens today still. Any grips that want to invite me to a Hollywood party.
I mean, how many parties have I thrown when there's someone I don't know in my own house?
That's true. Yeah.
There you go.
A lot of really weird parties, back in the day too. The party began at 6 p.m. with a bar set up on the soundstage. There was, a bunch of tables set up around a papier-mâché reconstruction of hell, which was a familiar scene in the film, apparently.
That sounds awesome.
I know, right? Papier-mâché.
I want that for my next party. We're making that.
Sounds like a great way to start a fire, too. The stars, Paul Mooney and Ann Baxter, were actually both called to testify at the inquest that was held. Paul Mooney said he wouldn't be of any help because he left the party early. He even says, in quotes, what was called a gay party didn't seem so gay to me, as I had been working all day and I was just tired. Without seeming facetious, if that was a gay party, I wonder what a dull one would be. All the people were tired. The idea was just to throw a little shindig, show goodwill. We were very tired. Dog tired.
I mean, we've had that happen before.
like,
that's the
I
worst.
don't know if I'm...
Yeah, that's the worst when the cast party is, immediately after the rap.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. Yeah, exactly. Like, all right, and that's a wrap, Paul Mooney, ladies and gentlemen, and then he's like, oh yeah, don't forget your cookies and your drink before you
Whiskey
go.
and donuts out back, guys.
Yeah, whiskey and donuts, exactly, right, yeah. And, that's not really a party. Yeah, that's not, But to somebody that's, an electrician, that's not a Hollywood person.
Free booze.
Free booze. Also, I'm at a Hollywood party.
Yeah, and he didn't have to work all day. He didn't work on the film.
That's true, too. Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's probably the free booze.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Especially if you're a construction guy. You're like, I can drink for free.
In the 40s,
right, yeah, exactly,
of course. In
yeah.
the 40s, yeah, of course.
So apparently Edward was noticeably drunk, and he was actually escorted by a different friend to the gate that I was telling you about. His friend was trying to hail him a taxi. And when he finally got the taxi, he turned around and Edward was booking it back to the studio. He drunkenly ran.
Wait, I gotta walk on the catwalk before I go home.
That's almost a spoiler. Oh my god, nicely done. So apparently that was a thing back in the day.
Oh.
What do you mean?
I'll get into that in a second. Getting drunk and going on the catwalk. One friend, Alan Seeger, who this is actually I also got information from alanseeger.com, which was apparently his own actual information.
Wait, who's Alan Seeger?
He was just the person that owned the property, I guess, at the time.
That name sounds so familiar.
Yeah, it literally says, a property man said that, he was couldn't even walk, and that's why. So Alan Seeger was actually the person that walked him there. But yeah, like I said, they saw him booking it back to the studio. But even Seeger knew that he was drunk and that he did this all the time. And apparently, he in quotes it even says that he saw him earlier that day falling 2 to 3 times on the set that he was working on. So, he wasn't just drunk at the party.
That's what he was working early in the day somewhere else. But
somewhere else, yeah. Same studio, just different stage.
Pre-gaming it on the job.
But apparently that was something that a lot of people did because they knew, I can just get fucked up, go to the high rise and the catwalk because no one's going to go up there and no one's going to be like, hey, no one's seen Gary. Well, if he didn't clock out, I'm going to go climb this 65-foot catwalk and look for him. Yeah. No, that never fucking happened. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a good job. I'm just joking. Where did I leave off? So yeah, he had climbed the high backdrop, and from there, apparently, some people say that they saw him stumble or fall onto the catwalk, and then fall from there. So I mean, it was just bound to happen. It almost seemed like, you know what I mean. The party ended at 8:45, so at midnight, he was obviously just really drunk, and shouldn't have been there.
So he fell after the party had ended?
Yeah, because so this party ended at 8:45, and they found him at midnight, but that means if it fell during the party, that would have been the event of the party,
sure.
Everybody would have seen that. So he definitely had to
That was the second best part
after
of the
party. That's right, yeah. So yeah, after he fell, apparently they have like tons and tons of weird stuff that happens in the same area. Cold spots, unexplained noises, shadows on the soundstage, lights going on and off, things being moved. These are all reported by different guards, workers, maintenance workers, directors, actors. There are also several problems with Stage 5, which was right next door, and that's where Ozzy and Harriet was produced. And some people believe that it was, Ozzy himself, who was a workaholic, who died technically before his time.
Yeah, different Ozzy.
Right, that's hilarious.
Jameson was throwing up the horns.
That would be a great Ozzy and Harriet. Yeah, we just gotta find. Oh my god, that's funny.
I thought it was Ozzy and Sharon, but whatever.
But yeah, they think that he haunts the set because he was like a workaholic. That's like a spoiler for you. The 1920s and 30s, it was known as Metropolitan Studios. That in the later years of the studios, the offices were mostly empty, and the offices that when they were occupied were actually occupied by Al Christie, who was a big film pioneer from 1925 to the 30s. And Christie was apparently another person that worked till 16-hour days type of dude, just never could stop. But apparently he lost everything when the stock market crashed, and not just his money. Apparently he had all of it wound up in the studio, in his house, his car. Like, he lost literally everything. A lot of people say that because he never regained real success or wealth, that's why he still haunts the area. A lot of people report Stage 6 being haunted as well, and that was where a gaffer fell to his death about 20 years ago. They don't give his name here, I'm not sure why, but that could also be the thing. Me and James were talking in the previous episode where it's strange when suicide notes actually come out, like how we know Peg Entwistle's suicide note. Like, it's strange that there isn't like a law or something on that, like, to not be published, because we were talking about the Oban and how Charles Love sent a note to Harry Langdon, and it would be really great to read that, but also, like, would that maybe he didn't want.
I think it maybe has more to do with like the family after the fact, whether or not they're going to release it to the public.
That's true.
Or whether or not press gets their hands on it before the family gets their hands on it, too.
Sure. Like in the case of Peg Entwistle, the hiker found the notes, so they were probably like...
Yeah. And the press was probably there
that's true.
Immediately.
Yeah, right.
And at the time, too, you were saying earlier, or the other day, that the press was the police some of the time.
I mean, the press were always quicker.
They were getting paid more to sell stories than they were by being a detective. So they would clock out of one and go into the other, So... But
they were, the press was, better than the police, like you said, they made actual money. And the cops had to clock out. When you're a journalist, you don't have to clock out.
Yeah, plus they were very speedy too, because they're trying to get the jump on the scoop and stuff. So it's like, not only that, you're not wasting any time. You're out there immediately looking for witnesses or clues or anything.
Got to make up things like the Hollywood sign girl.
Yeah, right.
I can't believe that was what they came up with.
And that was as good as it got.
That's hilarious. The last little ghost story, kind of cool. But another former stage manager, like he said, he complained about Stage 6, where the gaffer fell to his death 20 years ago. But he described it specifically as whenever you went to close for the night, he would turn off the lights and make sure to lock all the doors. But as he's leaving every night, he could hear footsteps in the rafters above him. And as he's moving, he can hear it, and when he stops, they stop. And then he keeps moving, and they keep moving, and then he stops, and he stops. And he's like, it's freaky.
And it's certainly not my own echo?
Mm-hmm. No, he can hear it as the rafters. He's worked there,
Oh, above him.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's Edward Gray.
So and that was all three of those stories were from the same studio.
Same
correct?
Studio, just two different stages, I guess, technically.
Around the same
but they're literally right next door, and Yeah, they're probably. I mean, films take up several different stages, so they're probably doing Stairway to Hell in both of them. I mean, maybe even the whole fucking studio.
Fun fact: How the Grinch Stole Christmas, when it filmed at Universal Studios, took up 11 sound stages.
Wow.
Which is the largest production to ever be on that lot at that time. There might have been larger productions since then, but there's 28 sound stages, and it took up 11 of them.
That's crazy. Is it true they finally took out the Who stuff?
Yeah, it's gone. I mean, it was like
it was falling apart. It was all sun blasted.
It looked like crap. Yeah.
Like when I was
it was
a
not
kid,
magical at all.
When I was,
Yeah.
I loved The Grinch growing up. I was so excited when they had that on the studio tour. I remember coming and seeing it for the first time on the studio tour, but hearing that they're taking it down, like having seen it earlier this year, I'm like, dude, that was a fire hazard waiting to happen.
That's true.
We all know Universal Studios catches on fire, you know.
Basically keep fire hazards.
Right? I'm not,
so
and
silly.
I digress.
Right.
Before I go off on my own
before we
personal
spend
rage
a
rant.
20-minute tangent I have to edit out later.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I have worked for the mouse and for the woodpecker. So
I was going to say the Minion.
The Minion, yes.
The mouse and the Minion, there you go.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Because nobody knows who Woody Woodpecker is anymore these days.
That's true,
That's
yeah.
true.
They're like, how did she work for a bird?
I actually was the woodpecker for a while, so.
I was the walrus.
Oh, nice.
Coo-coo-ka-choo! Nice.
Wait, were you
All
really
right,
a
all
walrus?
right.
Oh.
Well, all right,
It's like
Wallace
I
was
was
using
I was
it
throwing
right.
my Beatles joke.
You
in there.
never know. There's so many random characters.
I've done the what are those characters called?
The scare actors, or
No, but I mean just like in the park, like I would like be in the parade and stuff, and I would be Mickey Mouse or a knockoff of Mickey.
Wait, where is this?
I worked for an animation store, and they would have me dress up to like hand out balloons to kids and stuff, and
That's
I would
awesome.
be, you're Mickey Mouse with a Y,
Oh,
stuff like that.
They're usually called fuzzies or mascot
Yeah.
characters, but
Yeah.
oh, that's cool.
So yeah, so when I was like 19, 20 years old, I'd be walking around waving, handing kids balloons and stuff, and try to get them into this, animation art dealer that sold animation cells for like thousands of dollars. Like any
That's
kid is
crazy.
gonna be able to walk in there and buy that stuff. But that was his plan.
I mean, it's
But-
a cool gimmick.
I'm really a big animation fan. So for me, working there was exciting. But it was definitely not a place that if you were, I have $50, they'd be like, you can look at the paintings if you like. So
Take this and laugh at you.
but it was cool. It was very cool. Well, my story has to do with something here in Hollywood as well, and it's actually on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood, actually on the corners of Hollywood and Wilcox. So they call it the Pacific Warner Theater because it was purchased in the 70s from Pacific Theaters, but basically it was the creation of the Warner Brothers themselves. Let's take a trip down history here, memory lane, if you will.
I'm gonna put in some sound effects of like.
Yeah, the harp. Well, let's hear the harp. Go back down into. But I would say I'm a big fan personally of movies. I really enjoy watching movies. I've always been into just watching in films and being in the theater and stuff. And this is a very grand, beautiful theater. If you can find photos of it online, I highly recommend it. You can see kind of what that old school genetic feel of the 20s and 30s and stuff of these grand theaters looked like, and how people really, it was kind of like a night out on the town. It was a big to do, if you will.
I mean, the ones you're showing us right now are amazing. Oh, whoa! Holy Jesus!
There you
man.
go. Yeah.
Can't find can't
Exhibit
find
D.
those anywhere. I bet.
What were those machines called? I forgot.
Yeah, right.
Projector.
Microfiche.
My 1980s projector.
Oh,
Exhibit F. So the theater was well, again, being a fan of movies, like I was saying, movies officially debuted on October 14th, 1888. That was the first motion
Movies in
picture.
general. Oh, okay.
The first motion picture was shown.
Was that the train that we were talking about?
I think
Okay.
that's considered the first
I want
live
to
action film.
talk about that later on, and how Thomas Edison is a bastard.
Oh yeah.
We kind of
yeah.
already went over that one.
Oh
already,
yeah,
didn't
but I know the tea.
Oh, we can tell the whole story,
That's
the
true.
whole kit and caboodle.
Okay.
Well, so
okay.
we're looking at October 14th, 1888, and up until basically the mid-20s, there was no sound involved in movies. You had, place cards that would say what was going on in the story or what characters were saying, and then you had somebody probably playing like live music in the background. Yeah, if you saw the Three Amigos, then you know what I'm talking about. but yeah,
so many good references in that movie.
So silent films in there, basically silent film era. And again, Hollywood is making all these movies at this time. They're making all these silent films, but it isn't until the Warner Brothers come along that the idea of sound is now a possibility. Okay, and you have four brothers in the Warner Brothers. You have Albert, Harry, Jack, and Sam. It's the four Warner Brothers. It's not Dottie and Yakko and Wacko.
And Warner's sister.
Yeah, I thought it was. It's not. It's Albert, Harry, Jack, and Sam. So
Oh my God.
false advertising, and they're not locked in the water tower either. That's not true either.
They don't just let them out every
No
day
way.
at
They
3
don't.
o'clock for 30 minutes.
For 30 minutes, and then they slam them back in there. So basically, Sam was the guy that was the pioneer as far as wanting to pursue sound in movies, to pursue to go down that avenue and see what they could really find. And so he started to partner with GE, General Electric.
That's a trip to me because I don't know. Not that we have General Electric as a sponsor or anything,
Right.
but we would be okay with that.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because I got to give it to Gene. They are very much pioneers in their fields.
Yeah.
They're in a lot of different fields, and they're constantly investing in like that type of stuff. Sorry to
No,
but
they're
I mean,
pioneers.
And yeah, I mean, I remember being younger, and General Electric was sponsoring the Electric Light Parade at Disneyland
Well, there
when
you
it
go.
first came out.
and that was, I mean, it's still revolutionary technology that they do. That podcast I was listening to is about some like futuristic thing where you create a digital twin of yourself online, so that way, like the same way you would create a digital twin of a car, and you would test out this car for 100,000 miles, and then when things break down, you would know, hey, if it breaks down here at day such and such, it's probably going to break down on day such and such on an actual car. So that was like of course this podcast was a fiction podcast that's about like replacing a real person and all this other stuff, but it was sponsored by GE because they had this idea, and then just kind of like, run with it, which is really cool.
Right.
Yeah, that's a trip.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that Sam was really pursuing buying a radio station with Warner Brothers money, and the brothers were he basically got him on board with it, and by purchasing KFWB, that basically led to the talks with GE.
Oh,
Fun
and
fact:
that's the towers that are on
KFWB.
top, right?
Yeah, correct. And so when you see the two, as they're considered iconic towers now, because apparently when those were put up there, that was like, wow, you have two massive antennas on top of your building here, and that's broadcasting to all of Los Angeles and San Fernando Valley and whatnot. So you have all these you have these giant towers, and fun fact: KFWB stands for Keep Filming Warner Brothers.
Oh,
So there you go.
damn, subliminal.
Right? Boom. It's now a Spanish station, by the way. The station does still exist, but it plays Spanish radio.
Do they have a different acronym for it now?
I don't know what it is, and I will not make that joke.
That is a good call.
No.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
I just
You're
have
good.
to edit it out later anyway. Yeah, that's a good point.
But so they GE and Sam Warner kind of start to build off of this technology that GE comes to him with, saying that we can possibly pair sound to movies. What do you think? And he wants to pursue it. So he pursues it, and they release Don Juan with sound effects and music incorporated into the film already. Okay, so this is a big deal. Everyone's like, "Wow, holy crap!" Now we have, we don't even need a person to play the piano or whatever. We have these sound effects in here. What a trip! But it's very costly to do this. Okay, so he really has to fight for them to bring sound into the movies, for them to try and build this or to make a movie and to start to go forward with making films from now on with sound and music and whatnot. So he talks to the brothers, and they decide that they're going to build their own theater, which is what becomes the Pacific Warner Theater. They're going to build this theater to basically showcase movies with sound and with all these things, and it's going to be built with Sam in mind, heading up all of the acoustics and the electronics and whatnot, and to basically pioneer this whole speaker system or surround sound or whatever you want to call it. They don't give a lot of detail on how it was set up as far as, you know, if it was surround sound or speakers, whatever. But I know that he was the one that was installing all the speakers and whatnot into the theaters himself.
He was like the original THX.
Right, exactly. So, you know, he's getting there. He's Mr. Dolby and just going to town on that. So
That's crazy.
So they unveil this. They decide that this is in 1925. They have the plans to build it. They have if you look online, there's an artist rendering of what it will look like. They had in the artist rendering a giant tower almost in the middle of the theater. I forgot what it was a knockoff.
Like in the middle of
Like
the
the-
stage?
like the
or
RKO.
middle
at the
of
top. So it was like at the top, and then it would have this big kind of in the middle,
Oh, okay.
almost like
Yeah.
a clock tower kind of looking thing.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
So outside.
Outside,
Oh,
correct.
okay.
And they Go
Like
ahead.
RKO, like you see at the beginning of the RKO.
yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
They
Or
were
at the end of Rocky Horror.
That's like,
I forget. Good call. But that's not what ended up happening. The towers ended up being there, and that was kind of ended up being a bit more iconic than that, because he was almost knocking that off of another building that he just liked it. So he was copying. I forget what it was, if it was a Union Station or something like that. And so when they didn't do that, they put these towers up here. That ended up becoming even more iconic. So it worked out. It worked out well for them to do that.
okay.
So I think they quote something like $3 million for the project to be built. The construction starts in, and halfway through the construction, it's not going as quickly as they'd hoped, and it's coming in over budget. So they're really upset now because it's lagging and it's more expensive, and at the same time they're now filming The Jazz Singer, which is in their plans to become the first movie ever incorporated with sound and everything. All
So
together.
they're actually filming it already?
Yeah,
Oh,
so they're
crazy.
filming
I
this
didn't know
as
that.
the building is being built.
Wow.
And of
Oh.
course the film is...
And that's a trip, because back then movies did get made a lot quicker.
Yeah. I mean,
So that
it
is
wasn't in production for
pushing-
2, 3, 4 years or whatever.
Right, yeah.
They filmed it relatively quickly. The film does star Al Jolson.
Good old blackface
Good
Al
old blackface Al
Jolson.
Jolson, yeah. It basically the building is not going to be ready by the time that the film is ready to be premiered. And that was the whole point of this theater, is that this theater is being specifically built to show this movie. So the brothers are really upset. They're really disappointed that they're not able to premiere this in this crown jewel of the Warner Brothers theaters. And so Sam is now really upset by this. And so he's seen down there, yelling at the building and cursing and shaking his fist and just showing his frustration, and everybody can see this. And ultimately it gets the better of him, and poor old Sam has a brain aneurysm and dies 6 months before this movie is released. Okay. So he's not able to see the fruition of what he's worked so hard for. I mean, again, being a pioneer in this, it's going to be very exciting for this to be released into the world. Nobody's really seen anything like this other than the Don Juan, and that didn't, again, have the talking in it. So everyone, the brothers are really upset. The film actually ends up being released in New York City, again, 6 months 6 months after he died. So, I'm sorry, excuse me, I apologize. 6 months when the movie theater opened 6 months after he died. The movie was released just a day after he died. So the brothers were supposed to be,
Wow.
So I apologize. The brothers are supposed to be in New York. They decided to release the film in New York, and they can't because they're going to be attending Sam's funeral. So all the Warner Brothers missed this big premiere. The movie is shown in New York. It comes out to a huge fanfare. It finally is able to come back into California and release, but it's not released for at least another 6 months because the theater itself is that far behind.
Jesus.
Okay.
That's crazy.
So the theater itself opens up on April 26, 1928, and actually Al Jolson is there to premiere for the premiere, for the opening, for the grand opening. So they have a bunch of movie stars, but Al Jolson is one of the movie stars.
Mm-hmm.
They don't show that movie though. They actually, the first film that was shown there was a film called Glorious Betsy. What that's about, I don't know. And if it had sound, I don't know. But I would guess it did by this point, because you're going to premiere that movie at the cinema. So
yeah.
But Glorious Betsy was the first one shown. Let me see here. Al Jolson. Oh, I said it was the opening. Okay, so I'm sorry. So after it opens up, it opens to huge fanfare. It seats over 2,700 people. It has multiple theaters on the inside. They had to tinker with the balcony at points. They've completely closed off the balconies in the 1970s, I believe, when they refurbished the whole place. So it's gone through a lot of changes. Unfortunately, nowadays you can't visit the building because of multiple reasons. One would be the Northridge earthquake damaged quite a bit of the infrastructure around it, causing a lot of the portions of the building to be closed off immediately. And then when they started construction of a subway, there's a subway that runs underneath the street that also added to the structure being not sound. And so because of that, they basically had to shut down the whole building. Now, there was at one point a church group that was able to rent out a portion of the building, and they held services there until the late 90s, I believe it was. And then after that, they were basically told that they have to leave the building because they can no longer let anybody into the building. So to this day, the building is there. It is completely boarded up and shuttered. However, there are security guards that do patrol the area. Obviously, we have a large homeless problem here in Hollywood, and I'm sure if they were able to break in there, that they would have a huge encampment inside because it's a massive. It takes up almost half of the city block for this one building. A lot of these security guards feel that they've seen Sam. Sam again is Sam Warner, the man who basically brought this theater with his own blood, sweat, and tears, and soon after a brain aneurysm. But
blood, sweat, and brains. Jesus.
But a lot of people feel that they've seen the ghost of Sam in the building. Security guards countless times have seen the outline of his ghost, usually seen wearing a suit and a fedora or a dress of that 1920s look. But basically walking back and forth, sometimes just shaking angrily, yelling at something. But they've actually even reported seeing him go into the elevator and going into the elevator to take it upstairs and then basically going to his office. They've had reports of him actually being in the office, moving things around like waste paper baskets or chairs, hearing a ruffling of papers or rustling of papers, and things like that. And then some of them have said that they've seen him leaving. So coming back down the elevator. So, he's been seen in many parts of the building, but it always seems to be work related. It always seems to be that he's there for either work purposes or just, again, showing that anger and that frustration of the building not being ready when he needed it to be. Mm-hmm. But it seems that because of that energy that he had from that, it's definitely left a mark on that building. Mm-hmm. When you read haunted books about Los Angeles, I've noticed that they say that this place is one of the most commonly haunted places in Los Angeles or in Hollywood, because his spirit is so, the energy of his spirit is so strong there. I personally, leading groups on this tour, I like this. I just think that that's cool history wise, that this building was made to show the first movie ever with sound. Mm-hmm. Again, being a movie fan, I think that that's very interesting. Unfortunately, it wasn't the first place to show it, but that was the intent of it, and that's kind of cool. But when I had a guest take some photos of, if you decide, anybody out there listening decides to go down to the building, you can get some decent shots of the front foyer. There's boards there with holes in it that you can stick a camera in and take some cool shots, and I do recommend that. But we had one of our guests do that, and I did see the outline. One of the photos kind of looked like the ghostly outline of somebody in a suit. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could take it or leave it. You could use your imagination, and it was neat.
I mean, I've had that happen on, I run tours too.
Yeah.
and they take pictures at that hole that's down by the door, at the bottom of the door. And I had guests one by one coming, taking turns taking pictures, and everybody looked at their pictures and they all had this like shadow in the picture. And then we compared all the pictures to each other, and if you put them in order, it looked like the shadow was moving across because it's in a different place in each picture.
Interesting.
Whatever that is,
Sure.
it could have been the security guard's shadow in there, but still very spooky and satisfying,
Absolutely.
on the tour.
I got a lot of weird pictures with that one. Somebody had a face in the light that was in there.
Yeah, in the glass. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. It's just, I mean, it's a beautiful building. I mean, it looks like, I mean, I always say on the tour it was something that would have rivaled the Pantages when it was open. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Nice.
So let me give you just kind of a couple of quick facts here about it. Basically, when Sam and GE get together and they create the sound, they called it Vitaphone. Okay, so Vitaphone is what was basically the brand to make these movies. It premiered in New York in 1926. So that was in 1926 was when the Jazz Singer was, Vitaphone was.
So they used Vitaphone.
Sorry.
At the release in New York.
Right. So I think the 1920s the Vitaphone was for the Don Juan. So that was 1926 because 1927 was the Jazz Singer. So the Vitaphone was actually used for, I believe, for the Don Juan, and then they premiered Vitaphone in the Egyptian Theater a few months after the New York show. So. And again, it was popular, but it was expensive, so that was a big reason. But then, obviously, when the Jazz Singer was released, it ended up being like a huge blockbuster. Like it made something like $4 million or something like that at the time. And so, of course, this is 1927, so $4 million.
Could you imagine being like a silent film star and seeing that and being like, shit?
Well, a lot of people's careers were over at that time.
I mean,
a lot of
the ones
actors
that
had accents.
Or just voices that don't sound that great on camera.
Yep. Yeah. That was it.
So.
What was that movie that was like? Some old movie where they discuss that.
They talk about that in Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the Rain, thank you. Yeah, where they're like putting the mic in the rows and stuff closer and stuff. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But that's kind of how it was.
Sam died on October 5th, 1927. The movie was released in New York on October 6th, 1927. So it was just literally before the day before. And
I wonder if he would have gone to the premiere or still have been working.
Yeah, probably would have still been there.
Yeah, that's a good question.
G. Albert Landberg was the architect of the building itself. So.
Any other buildings he did in Hollywood?
That's a good question. I did not see anything. I think he was well known for other buildings, but I forget offhand what it was. Pacific Theaters bought them in 1968. It closed in 1994, and then it finally fully closed in 2013 with from the church. So 2013 was when the church was officially kicked out. So yeah.
God can't say.
But for the ghost stories, definitely say that. There was a plaque put up to commemorate Sam in the front lobby, and a lot of people feel that the hauntings happen around the plaque area. So if you're able to see inside and you can see the plaque, that would be a prime location to possibly spot Sam. They also said some things disappear from time to time too, but it's mostly just seeing him as a ghost, kind of. Walking back and forth, or again taking the elevator upstairs. So
crazy,
very cool,
wonderful.
Damn.
Well, there you go, people.
Good story, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah.
All right, well, this has been episode 3.
Yeah.
So it's Haunted, the podcast.
3, or we'll see.
We'll see how much we really liked episode 1.
Do you guys want your assignments for next week?
Oh yeah.
That sounds great.
We should probably tell our listeners we're kind of doing a little bit new format now. Tia's jumped on as kind of like a producer role as well.
I have decided to give you guys assignments moving forward.
Exactly.
I'm going to be the chief, like in Carmen Sandiego.
Right.
With assignments to investigate.
We don't need to find anybody that doesn't exist.
I basically all day, every day, like I wake up watching Chills, and then I'll watch Bailey Sarian, and then after that I'll listen to My Favorite Murder, And then after that, I'll watch some Unsolved Mysteries, Mystery and Scandal, and bring it back home with a silent film at the end of the day to go to sleep.
And you wrap it all up with an episode of Alf? Is that how it
exactly.
goes?
Yeah, and I'm like, The Simpsons. And
So I do know a lot of stories, and like by all means, guys, like if you come up with a story or something that is like immediate in the news, like by all means, like that is gonna be more important than anything I could give you. For these days, there's going to be a theme, and maybe it'll be obvious, or maybe after we share our stories next week, we'll know kind of what the theme or the idea I had behind putting these stories together. So Jameson, your assignment is to tell the real story of the Amityville Horror.
Ooh, excellent.
So I want to know the story behind the movie. Or behind the book that inspired the movie.
For all our listeners that don't know the Amityville Horror, you probably are listening to the wrong podcast.
Yeah. But they'll know by next week,
That's true.
They'll know
There you
next
go.
week
That's
what it
true.
is.
Yeah, stay tuned if you don't know it.
Pat, your assignment is The Exorcist, The Cursed Set.
Ooh.
So let me know why they believe that the set of The Exorcist was cursed. And mine, and I'm going to be vague with mine, I'm going to do The Curse of Atuk.
Oh. Well, that's definitely
No
vague.
explanation there. You'll find out next week.
Is it an acronym? Is it a different language? Did she say it wrong?
Is it a horribly racist trope? We don't know. Maybe.
Check in next time. But yeah, that's all right. Sweet. We're ready. We'll see you guys next week. Jameson might be coming in on telephone. Well, you guys will find out, I guess. Or we might have a guest host. Who knows? But yeah, tune in next time. If you like it, share it. Sharing is caring, and so is scaring.
Yay.
That's our sharing.
Bye, guys.
Caring, and so is scaring.
And so is scaring, yes. Yes. But also, yes, make sure and subscribe, and you can find us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Peace. Woo.